Monika Torgrіп, and I'm head of a unit called Technology at the Swedish Work Environment Authority. So, and the next picture shows a little bit, our authority is then under the Minister of the Work Environment. And so most of my authority is working with labor issues, obviously. On this picture, we are under regulations, and there's one part there called technology, and that's where I'm working. And so we're a little bit odd in this authority. But I'll let you know a little bit more about what we're doing. And the next one there shows this is Sweden, and like you're hearing, it's a large country with not evenly distributed people. We have divided up the country for inspections, labor inspectors, but we are not labor inspectors, the ones working with technology. We give the background for having safe work equipment. But what I'm talking about today is the product directive, which is more focused on to the manufacturer's responsibilities. So the other part is just for in a workplace you need to have safe products. And well, we have help being able to inspect products and the equipment in use and the practices, why we have a wide spread of our authority. But we are all based at the headquarters in Stockholm. And this is just our mission, which I'm supposed to tell you about. And of course, it's that we say that everybody working in Sweden have the same rights and should have a very good work environment. And I will end off with, I'm very proud to say that we have translated our webpage into Ukraine. So you can even go into our webpage and find, for all Ukrainians visiting temporarily or for long term in Sweden, we provide information so that everybody, you should not be dependent on somebody translating or misusing of people under bad conditions. It's very important for us. Now we come to the next one this is how we implement law in Sweden. We take in, our authority has the mandate to issue law in Sweden in certain areas. And we have 89, and we have a defined process of how we implement law. It's defined so that it takes a year and a half from when we have a decision, either it's a new directive coming or a new national law or something like that. We have a process of 1.5 years where we sit down, look at what is the regulation today and what is the new one? How big are the differences? We make up a schedule showing the differences. We involve companies, workplaces, labor authority, labor parties, to sit down and talk about, okay, the new regulations, how will this affect you? So during this year and a half, we have a constant discussion with everybody, both in the legal side, but also on the ones who are then influenced by our new laws, of how will this affect you, so that everybody can start preparing during this time. And it is then implemented, and the transition time is depending on, of course, what type of a law it is. If we can choose ourselves, or if it's an EU regulation, then we know the set date when it has to be implemented. And the next one shows how these 89 ordinances are distributed, and that's why I wanted to tell you the most important part over there is the internal market regulations, I think, because that's the one that I work with. And they are then, as it says, maybe you don't understand Swedish as well, but it says arbetsgivare is, so that's the employer. But the ones over there, which I've marked with a square, says manufacturer, import, distributor, or supplier. So that's where you have the law. So they're focusing on manufacturers. All the others are more onto the employer and the employer rules. And here is, now I don't have the pictures of the machinery directive because I wasn't sure if you have seen it. So I just made up a few things, a few points that I want to point out. What's specific about the machinery directive? I would say, as I said before, a lot of things are a machine. If you have, there are two conditions for it to be a machine. You have at least one moving part, and you have a power source. Then it's machine. So a normal bicycle that you pedal just by human is not a machine, but if there's an electrical motor on it, which is common, at least in Sweden and in the hilly parts of the city, you see this electrical bike coming out, that's a machine. So, so we regulate and we look at with market surveillance anything from a very simple thing up to a nuclear plant or a huge manufacturing facility for hundreds of millions. And it can all be declared as a machine. And it can be consistent of very many different product directives. But if they're all controlled in one control system, it's called a machine. And the most important part here is the manufacturer has about all the responsibility for fulfilling the directive. The manufacturer must look at what am I manufacturing? What is it supposed to do? And then look at what regulations are there for this type of product. And the manufacturer has to look at, okay, I can design it this way, do a risk evaluation, see, okay, how can I take care of all these risks? And there's 3 steps in what you can choose. One, which is the most preferable one, is to design away a risk. And here, it's, this is where the standards come in, especially the C-type standards, because if there is a way of designing away a risk, you have to do it. Otherwise, you don't fulfill the directive. If it's reasonable to assume that you can design away, you have to do that. You have to take care of that before you continue with your design. And the second part is you try to make some sort of a guarding, fence or some plastic covering or something like that to hinder something from flying out from the machine. But that's a second option. If you cannot design it so it's completely safe, then you have to try to hinder anything from coming out from the machine. Even if it's a nuclear plant, you still have to kind of hinder everybody outside, environment and people. And the third option, which is when it comes to certain machines, can never be safe. My best example is a chainsaw. In Sweden, I don't know if Ukraine also use it a lot, especially in winter for wood cutting. A chainsaw is never safe. It never will be. But then the manufacturer has to have a very clear description of how it is used in a safe manner. So that's the third option, that you warn. And you have warning labels accordingly, which is then described in the standards, how you warn for different hazards in a way that everybody will know that it is a hazard. That's your third option. After you've gone through that, you have to consistently update your user manual. The user manual is part of the technical documentation. And for a machine, the user manual and the declaration of conformity must accompany every machine that's sold. So in many shops, they think that they don't have to, because in certain product directives, you don't have to accompany the product. But in the machinery directive, it has to accompany every single unit. So every box must have the declaration of conformity and the user manual, one of the official languages, and normally in also the national language. So you have to have the original one and the translation in the box. And what is very beneficial for you as a manufacturer to use the user manual, because in the user manual you tell the buyer what it is supposed to do. This is a machine to perform this task. And also, if it's foreseeable misuse, that somebody could think that it could be used for something else, then it's a very good thing to write in, it is not to do this. That is a way for you to kind of, okay, this is a machine to do this, and it's not intended to do this. And you have to tell how you use it in a safe way. Those are the most important parts, where and then you come into the discussion about if somebody's bought and used it in the wrong way. Well, if you completely clearly define that it's not supposed to be used that way, then it's probably not your fault that the accident happened. So there are certain parts that are very, very important. Do you want to ask me questions straight away? And after you've gone through all that part, you then issue the declaration of conformity. You write in, and here you have a lot of standards. We have, I think it's 800 machine standards. There are 3 different types. There's the A type, which is risk assessment standards. ISO 12,100. And then there's the B standards, which goes for common products like guardings, emergency stops, control systems. There are so A goes for everything, B goes for everything that needs it. So every machine that needs an emergency stop must follow the B standard for emergency stops. Then it comes down to the C level, which is for a specific type of machine. There's this standard, and those are the ones that give presumption. So if you follow a C standard for your product, then you have automatically fulfilled the machinery directive, if it's the right standard. There are, as we were talking about before, special procedures for in the machinery directive. There is the Appendix 4, which declares certain chainsaws is one of them, and certain machines that you have to either have follow a C standard. For some of them there are a C standard, then you can just follow that and it's okay. But if there are not, or if you choose not to, you have to get a third party body to assess and give a certificate that you're fulfilling. Because these are machines with certain specific risks. So they're on a special list of things that need to be put in that way. But there are also, there's as the blue guide, there is a guide to the machinery directive. It's a big book, but it's very good. It gives very good guidance of what the different clauses mean. And there are certain things like safety components that have to be CE marked. They're not a machine, but they have to be marked as a machine because they are a safety component. So there are certain things that come into, so it's very important to look at it, to see that it is under the machinery directive and it needs a CE marking by itself, as well as the machine. And so after you've gone through you made up the declaration of conformity, and in that you indicate if you're following a harmonized standard. You put it in there, but you have to know the standards before you put it in there. That's a common thing we interpret, that people are finding standards, but they're not really fulfilling the standards, and then you're in trouble anyway. And lastly, you put the CE marking on the machine. And we looked at the discussion about risk is one thing that we looked at. There were discussions about if only if it's a risk can you really have a case towards a manufacturer. But we've also said that in many cases, the first thing we see is a poorly made up declaration of conformity that looks very iffy. It's not signed, or it's the wrong directive, or it's an old version of a directive, or something like that. Then we say that and that's common among other authorities, other countries, saying that that is an indication of that somebody has not really put the effort into learning what are the demands. So that is a risk. We say that could be the first indication of that there is a problem with the products coming from this company. And as Pan also was saying about when the competitiveness, I mean, why we look at market surveillance is both for seeing to that we meet all the products on the European market should have a certain level of safety. We've decided on what is the minimum level. And the other part is a fair competitiveness. And so what we take as market surveillance authorities very seriously is if a company says, I am following the directive, but I know this other company who is not, please look it up. So that is one that's very serious business. If somebody says, it's a way of meeting the complaints from companies saying we're doing everything the right way and it's costing us our customers. So, but they then send in some type of document saying that this is the documentation that's provided by our competitor. Then we'll look into that, and that is one aspect of our market surveillance, is making sure that all companies are fulfilling this to get a good market working. So now we started on the next subject, which is market surveillance. So, as it said, it aims to ensure that we have safety, health, and consumer protection, as well as fair competitiveness between companies. Only safe products are allowed to be placed on the market. But still, there are dangerous products that can be discovered. It happens because it is a free market, it's a free trade, and it's a free flow of product. But it is the manufacturer who has the sole responsibility to ensuring that they fulfill the regulations. But we have the public authorities inspect products that are made available on the market and that they fulfill the legal requirements, including that they are correctly marked and tested. So I mean, the marking, CE marking itself is mandatory. It's a law for CE marking. Also, products that are not to be CE marked, it's illegal to mark a product that does not have a product there. That is also illegal. And we work very closely with customs, of course, to help sort this out. And so what we can do is take actions against economic operators. And what we can do is our measures can be then sales ban, withdraw products from the market, or even recall from the end users. And every sales ban is reported into the Commission. We have a system of informing other authorities of all our investigations. So we have ICSMS system, which is all authorities in Europe working with product directives. So we have a database of all products that we've looked at, so we can interchange with each other what we looked at, and if somebody has done some testing on some product, not every other country have to do that. You can go in, you can look at the test results, and you can use that on your market. And we are also obligated to look at our market if somebody else has found a problem, found a faulty product, then all other countries must follow and clear and take actions on their countries. And No, that one, yeah. So, and what we do that is either it's a planned inspection at the premises of the manufacturer or the importer, distributor, or retailer, or as a reaction to reported accidents, complaints from the public, or warning issued by other public authorities in Sweden or other countries. And are you all familiar with the terms manufacturer, importer, and suppliers? Yeah, sure. Okay, good. Because we sometimes have problems with, I saw when we came in, you have Rustad. No, it was just, anyway, some of these more warehouse, big department stores and things are buying now in a lot of products from different brands, but they're not completely aware of their obligations. If you're selling a box with a small machine in, you have to know the regulations, the demands on this before you give it to the end customer. You are of course not the one to do the remedies for it, but you cannot have it on the shelf. You cannot give it away to the end user. So you have to put this, and it comes back to what Pat was saying also, that you have to check your supply chain that it's okay. If it's not okay, then maybe you should not put it on your shelf. So there are different levels, and we can act on all of them, but we normally always go to the top of the chain, especially if it's a supplier or a manufacturer within Europe. And we also have, since a couple of years, agreed among the countries that the country who finds the problem will take all the actions against the supplier, even if it's another country. So if Sweden finds a problem on a German manufacturer, we will do the dealing with the German manufacturer, and we will of course inform the German authorities as well as every other authority. And if we need help, they can assist. But it's said that the authority that finds the problem should follow through, because then you have more of the background information and what was the accident's cause and all that part. Is easier trying to send over the case to another. So it's very good, and it's also one other aspect of giving fair competitiveness, because it's not within the country itself that you set a standard for the directives. It is set by every country doing the same evaluations. And that is a little bit more on the next picture. There is, it's a lot of information. You don't have to understand or read it all at the same time. I just wanted to put it up there. It's not, I haven't made this slide. It's an official slide from the European organization, the enterprise. It just shows how everything is connected, so that you see that there is the Parliament, you have the European Commission, and you have the committees and working groups, and you have the standardization and different groups where suppliers, manufacturers meet together with authorities, and there's very many ways of getting everything to work together. And we are active as, from my authority, we work with the Commission in the Machinery Committee. We work with SEM standardization, we work with ISO standardization, we work of course with a lot of manufacturing group networks, and we write the regulations, we work with notified bodies, and we have to work with all these parts and all this network to get it all to follow through, so that there is no loose ends. There are very many connections, but they do all fulfill a purpose, and they have to move forward in the same manner. And I see also, we were talking about that before, ISO standardization. For instance, one group that I was working with for a long time was control systems, and in that group we started out with mostly German manufacturers, most part of the group. But at the end, as it is now, it's consistent of 55 members in just this working group for control systems. And there are representatives from Japan, China, Australia, Canada, several from the US. I think they're both from standardization organizations in the US and several manufacturers in the US. And of course a lot of European. But it's a way of making sure that all the standards and all the levels are the same to ensure free trade. And the next slide there just shows a little bit of the areas that we're working on in my group, not just the machinery as you see, we also work with the equipment we use in exposed atmosphere. Simple pressure vessels, pressure equipment, personal protective equipment, but there we only have for professional use. It's the consumer agency who takes care of personal protective equipment for consumers. Scaffoldings, ladders, winding gears, protective railings. This is the area for the different directions that we are working with. That's my department. And the last two pictures is just a way of showing how we plan. These, every year we send in proactive market surveillance program. Every member state does, and within every sector. So at the moment, every member state in every sector has sent in, it's on the Commission's homepage, you can see what every country is planning on every directive for the next 3 years on proactive actions. So you don't have to be, it's just a way of showing how we look at it and how we plan. So the first column there just shows which directive it is. The second one shows a little bit what product category within the directive. And then what type of monitoring. See a proactive, and then we have for the vehicle lifts, we have together with the border controls looking at that. And we look at for motivation, why are we doing it? Has there been a lot of accidents, or is it, as we had also for the vehicle lifts, it was said that it was poor quality of Asian products coming into the Swedish borders. It turned out it was a lot of the European manufacturers who were worse than the Asian manufacturers, so it was very informative, this action. And also you said a priority for this, and this is also one that's emphasized even more now from the Commission, European Commission, that they want to, within the ADCO groups, which are formed for every product sector, there's an ADCO group, we meet and discuss to look at all these actions and try to coordinate as much as possible every year so that we cover as wide a spread of products as possible, and we also do it at the same level at the same time. So the companies being controlled feel that it's fair. If one country is looking at one aspect, if the neighboring country is looking at the same, then most companies will think, okay, well, this is fair. It's not me that's being targeted. It's an important issue, and it's decided on in the community. So that's why we're doing this together. And that one just follows on the rest. And the last one there, it just shows that we have it in different languages, and I wasn't sure exactly how to interpret and see all the Ukraine, but there is a web page. If you choose other languages and you go in, you have Ukrainian. You can go in. But Anna was asking me also, does it cover all aspects? And I said, I tried to compare the regions, but I have my card here. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll look into it and see how much more information we have.